We're wrapping up our summer, our time with David. We chose to walk through the life of David this summer, and summer's coming to an end, and that always gives me the blues. Summer coming to an end. It's still, to this day, I get sad about that. There's people that enjoy going back to school, and then there's boys. Okay? I keep trying to warn Noah, but that first morning when I wake him up and say, you have school today, I'm going to catch quite a bit of wrath right there. Summer ending it's just a sad thing. And so we've walked through David's life, and so summer's ending and David's life is ending, and he knows it. And he says in 1 Kings, he said to Solomon, I am about to go the way of all the earth. And so he knew he was reaching that age where he can sense that it was his time and he was going to go the way of the earth. So, I think it's in these last days of his life that he wrote Psalm 145. And I think it matches well with finishing up David's life. It's not a praise psalm. It's a praise psalm, but it's not a praise for a rescue that just happened, like he did so many times. He went into battle. God rescued him so many times, and then he has a praise psalm for that. It's not a cry out for God's help going into battle or in a tough situation, which he has many psalms like that. Psalm 145 is, to me, it's a look into the future. It's David's vision of the future. It's what he wants the kingdom to look like after he's gone. The king is concerned for the kingdom's future, and it's what he wants it to look like. And so, David cared about the future, unlike Hezekiah, who we know that when he was told of the prophecy of the destruction of Jerusalem, he said, well, that's fine because I know that's going to be generations later. It's not in my lifetime, he said. It's not going to happen in my lifetime, so fine. He actually said that's a good word. That's a good prophecy because we'll have peace and security in my lifetime. That wasn't the way David was thinking. David had learned that God is bigger than his lifetime. Remember, he wanted to build the temple for God. He wanted to build that lasting temple, and he was hot to do it. And God said, no, you're not doing it. You're not going to do it. Your son's going to do it. Not in your lifetime. We're going to wait till after your lifetime. So he was learning that lesson. And then in that lesson as well, God said, you know what? I'm the one that does for you, David. You don't do for me, I do. You don't do for me, I do for you, is what God tells us so often. And he says, I'm going to, not only are we going to build, your son's going to reign, and then he's going to build the temple, but you're going to have a descendant that's on the throne forever. One of your sons is going to be the Messiah, the king of God's kingdom forever. And so David understood. He was very clear that God is bigger than just his lifetime. So here at the end of his lifetime, he's looking to the future, and he has a vision of what he wants the kingdom to look like. And Psalm 145 is a healing song for us because we may sometimes feel that there's little hope for the future. We may feel like that, hey, I'm going to leave a world that was worse than the world that I came into. It's gotten worse. Every generation it gets worse. That is a thought pattern that can slip into our minds very easily. And there's plenty of evidence if you want to look for it. You can find it. If we're looking to the world, there's plenty of negativity. And we can think that way. And therefore, that affects our hope. So then we become hopeless about the future. And when you're hopeless about the future, that affects your daily life. There's a negative cloud about the future, and you think, why should I do something for the next generations? It's just going to get worse. And you see, that's what we need healing from. And that's what Psalm 145 provides for us. And the key is, in 145, is it changes the focus from the world to God, who doesn't change, who doesn't decline. Great is his faithfulness. The old songs remind us of God's character. The best worship songs are all about God. They're not about us and I'm so faithful in my struggle and all these, contemporary Christian songs. They're fine. That's fine. But when I come to church, I want to praise the Lord who doesn't change. I want to focus on him. I want to worship the Lord. And so that when we do that, when we cast our eyes upon him, then the light comes upon us where we do have hope for the future because of him, because of God's character. And so there's a light there, and it helps us. It gives us hope, and then it gives us light for the day today. It gives us hope for the future. It energizes us. And so David's life story, it really is all about hope. We learned very early on, the introduction of David is remember, Samuel is led to anoint one of the sons, one of Jesse's sons in Bethlehem. And so he goes through all the big handsome ones, older ones, and no. And then here David comes running in from the countryside, just a boy. And so that's our introduction to David. And then what happens? Samuel anoints him with oil and says, "You're the king of Israel." And so, was he? No. It was a promise that he would. And so he had to hope in that promise. And we saw in walking through David, half of the story of David and all these Psalms and all these stories in 1 Samuel, the history of David, is his struggle to become king. And if he didn't have that hope, he probably would have given up. It was such a struggle. But that hope that he was standing on the promises of God. God said, "I'm going to be king, and so I'm going to persevere. I'm not going to run away. I'm going to have to hide. I'm going to have to stay on the edge of Israel and hide in the wilderness. I don't want to go too far away. I don't want to go become a king of another kingdom. I know where God wants me to be, but I have to wait, and I have to persevere, even though things are tough." And so it was that hope that kept him going. And now at the end of his life, he's still hopeful because God promised him that one of his sons would be the Messiah. And so he's hopeful. He goes in, he faces the end of his life in hope for the future generations. And so it gives him this positivity. It gives him this light, even though he knows he's at the end of his life. Healing requires hope. Our theme, healing. Hope is part of it. Dawn brought up in her story that it wasn't until she believed that God can heal her that God healed her. She had to believe. She had to hope. She knew all these promises. You can't get through the gospel very long without Jesus healing somebody. That might have been the number one thing he did. He just bam, that's what he was doing. He was healing. Do we believe? Do we hope that he can heal us? Because the healing's not going to come without the hope. We have to have the hope. It's a necessary part of the healing. And so that's what we want to look at today. Hope. And Psalm 145 leads us there. This is verses 1 and 2.
A psalm of praise of David. I will exalt you, my God, the King. I will praise your name forever and ever. Every day I will praise you and extol your name forever and ever.
That's the voice of Annette Perry, if you didn't recognize. Thanks, Annette. Notice that David calls God king. David understands he's king, but he's not the highest authority. And Jesus pointed out in Psalm 110 that David actually wrote, "The Lord said to my Lord." The Lord said to my Lord. That's two lords, two kings that's higher than David. The Lord, my Lord, said, the Lord up top said to my Lord who's above me. See, two lords. And Jesus said that he pointed out that was David. David had a vision. David saw and wrote. It's talking about the Messiah. It's talking about me, the King of the kingdom. And it says here in Psalm 145, I will exalt and praise my King every day. And that's number one. That's on your bulletin. Five ways to find hope that we find here in Psalm 145. And the first is to worship your King every day. To worship your King. How do we begin to find hope? We need to worship your King. We need to praise him. And that's not only singing songs and worshiping the way we think of it. It's the word worship is actually to bow down. It's to prostrate yourself. It's to worship your King is to serve your King. And that's what we need to do every day. We need to wake up every day and say, I'm in service to you, Lord, today. It's to submit ourselves to his service. It's to choose to be part of his kingdom. It's to honor his authority and do his will. And that gives us hope. Why? Because we're part of something bigger than the world, part of something bigger than ourselves. We're part of an eternal kingdom. And our connection is, what's my place? I'm a servant of the King in the eternal kingdom. That gives us hope every day. This is verses 3 through 7.
Great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. His greatness no one can fathom. One generation will commend your works to another. They will tell of your mighty acts. They will speak of the glorious splendor of your majesty, and I will meditate on your wonderful works. They will tell of the power of your awesome works, and I will proclaim your great deeds. They will celebrate your abundant goodness and joyfully sing of your righteousness.
Great. The format in this psalm, after the introduction and the exit and the meat of it, is basically what happens is there's a statement about God's character. God is this. And then it talks about how we should, or how it says they, and that's David. He's using future verbs. He's saying they will. This is how they will respond. And so you see his vision of the kingdom, that people will look at God's character and then they will respond this way. And that's the format throughout. And so here the statement about God's character is his greatness. It's worthy of praise. It's beyond what we can fathom. It's beyond searching out. That's true of the universe, isn't it? We haven't got to the end yet. I don't know. I haven't been to the Science Center in a couple. Our prescription ran out. A couple of subscription, whatever, ran out a couple years ago. But I haven't heard that we've found the end of the. Yeah, here it is. It's right here. We know we've got it measured out. It's 3 zillion light years away. Got it all. We know exactly everything that's going on here. No, we don't even know the end of it. We have no idea. The more you look into it, the more it blows your mind, and it should blow our mind. And what's happened is all this textbooks and theories and stuff has made this stuff boring for most of us. Some people are fascinated, but for most of us, it's become boring. We've boredomized God's beautiful creation, haven't we? What are we doing? I mean, the Science Center is a good place because it gets you in touch with a little bit of that, a little bit of the wonder. And I think a lot of the good teachers are trying to do that too, to say, look at the mystery of it. Instead of being a control freak and saying, here's how we understand everything about it, and smashing it down, no, we embrace the bigness of it and embrace the greatness and say there's so much to discover. And the other key piece that we're missing is even if we get to that point, then we're worshiping creation, the created things, instead of the creator. It's just like the old idol worship. You start worshiping something that's created. An idol itself, or an idol that represents something like the sun, the rain, fertility. These are all things that God made. Worship the Creator. Animals. They're cool. Don't worship the animals. Worship God. Worship Him. And then we get in touch with this one great being that made everything. And then we get in touch with His greatness, and we get lost in it. And that gives us hope. That's the second thing, to live in awe of the King's greatness. We're His servants, and then we look to the King, and then we're just in awe of His greatness. That gives us hope. That's healing for us. What are you laughing about, Tony? Tell me later. All right, this is 8 through 13.
The Lord is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and rich in love. The Lord is good to all. He has compassion on all He has made. All you have made will praise you, O Lord. Your saints will extol you. They will tell of the glory of your kingdom and speak of your might, that all men may know of your almighty acts and the glorious splendor of your kingdom. Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and your dominion endures through all generations.
So the statement of God's character here is we talked about it last week. It comes up in the Bible constantly. It's God's selfie, if you will. Back from Exodus 34, when He said, Moses, you can't actually see me face to face, but I'll shoot you a selfie. Hit me up on Instagram, and this is what I look like. What happened was He said, turn into the rock, and I'll go by, and I'll speak who I am. And this, what He said, is what Israel is, what we have. We have God on God. We have His profile. And it's 135 characters in Hebrew without the spaces. He fit it in. And see, and what would God choose to say in such a small space? Well, what does He choose to say? He says, I'm gracious, compassionate, slow to anger, rich in love. That's the way He starts. That's the way He spends the majority of the time describing Himself. Isn't that amazing? The God who made everything, who we're marveling about, who holds everything in His hands, who's in absolute control. And then he decides, here's the way I'm going to describe myself. This is my true character. Gracious, compassionate, slow to anger, rich in love. He is mighty and powerful, and we need that, but we also really, really need Him to be kind and forgiving, don't we? Because we're not, even if we choose to be His servants, we're not real good at it, are we? He's justified in He would be completely justified in His anger and punishing of us. We're all sinful. We've all fallen short, but see, that's not His character. Our King is Jesus, and the mightiest act of our King was the fact that He sacrificed Himself. He gave Himself up to save us. Every day we need to remember that, don't we? Those are the good oldies. Get us in touch with that, with the songs we're talking about. Our King's mightiest act was that He gave Himself for us, that He sacrificed Himself so that we would be saved. The fact that He loved you so much that He died for you gives you hope. We need to go back to that every day. We need John 3:16 every day. The great King, the great Creator, loved you so much. He's so compassionate and gracious that He gave Himself for you. This is 13 through 16.
The Lord is faithful to all His promises and loving toward all He has made. The Lord upholds all those who fall and lifts up all who are bowed down. The eyes of all look to you, and you give them the food in their proper time. You open your hand and satisfy the desires of every living thing.
And this statement of his character here is really is the great is thy faithfulness. He's so faithful. He a faithful God. He made us. Unlike, what was that one cartoon guy that did those sketches that were really sarcastic and stuff? He had one of them where God had the earth in a little jar, and he's just kind of watching it from the far side. Yeah, he's just kind of watching. Oh, the best one was he opened up the world jar, and then he had a little spice thing, and it said jerks on it, and he started peppering it into the earth, and it's just to see what happens. He made he made us, and then he cares for us. I miss that. I used to have one of those every day. That me and that guy were right on the same page pretty much every day. He cares for us. He provides. Nothing has proven. It says he opens his hands and satisfies all our desires. Name me something. Show me something that proves to satisfy our desires outside of what's in his hand. Show it to me. Show it. I spent a lot of years of my life looking for it, and I had to come back to his hand to finally find it. Show me where he satisfies outside of what he gives you, because it's just not out there. How long do we have to take to learn this? How many years? He is the only, what he gives us is the only thing that can satisfy us. Nothing else. We need to learn that, don't we? And there's a promise here. It says, if we bow down, he will lift us up. If we bow down, if we humble ourselves, he will lift us up. This is basically in Matthew, which if you're reading our schedule of reading the Bible through a year, you're doing Psalms and Matthew, which is a delightful time. And what he does in Matthew, towards the end of his time with the disciples, he's in his last few days, he keeps saying the same lesson over and over again. If you want to be first, you need to be last. If you want to be great, you need to be the servant. If you exalt yourself, you're going to be humbled. If you humble yourself, you've been. And so it's like I have just these last few lessons with you. This is the one I want you to get. That if you humble yourself, he will exalt you. Humble yourself before the king is number 4. When that doesn't sound like it brings hope to humble ourselves. That's not what the world would say. The world says you find hope by looking to yourself for strength in being great and working hard. And not that any of that's necessarily terrible, but that's not the silver bullet. That's not what's going to work all the way. What we need, God. We need when we're weak, as David prayed this morning. Make us weak. When we're weak, then he's strong, and that's where our hope is. Our hope is in his strength, not ours. And so we need to humble ourselves before him and say each day that the reason we have hope for tomorrow is not based on our strength or how smart we are, how strong we are, how whatever we are, fill in the blank. It's because of him and because of his strength, his provision, his will. That's how tomorrow's going to be a good day because of him, not because of us. And so we need to humble ourselves every day and say, I want to be weak. I want you to be strong through me. That's going to give me hope for the day. And then this is the last section of the psalm. This is 17 through 21.
The Lord is righteous in all his ways and loving toward all he has made. The Lord is near to all who call on him in truth. He fulfills the desires of those who fear him and hears their cry and saves them. The Lord watches over all who love him, but all the wicked he will destroy. My mouth will speak in praise of the Lord. Let every creature praise his holy name forever and ever.
Yeah, see, David ends with his full vision, which is the renewed earth, where all of creation is praising. And then Paul tells us all of creation is waiting on tiptoe for us, for humanity to get on board. They're like, come on, we're all on board. We're waiting for you guys. And that here is, the character trait here about God is he's willing to make himself known. He's willing to be near to us. He is the great creator, but he's also willing to be right there with us personally. Call on him, cry out to him, and he will draw near to you and save you. He is watching over you. Doesn't that give you hope? That's what gives you hope. Hope is found in God's presence. That's where hope is found. You know, we have some people like that. We know people like that. People, when you're in their presence, you're a little more. You pick up on their confidence. You're confident with them. You know, hey, if this guy or gal is going, then good. Then I'm on board. You know, there's people who have a little bit of that. How much more so the Lord? How about the disciples? I mean, walking with Jesus. How much confidence would, you know, of course we all know they were wimps and ran away when it got tough, but, you know, they probably had some swagger in walking into some of these towns. You know, hope is found in God's presence, and he's willing to draw near to us.